I was reminded this week of this idea that I want to share with you that I think not only has to do with the story that we're going to look at today in Acts, but has to do with this church as a challenge to all churches, but as a challenge to this church even more specifically. And here's the idea. Mission changes as your focus changes. So the mission and where you're going and where you're driving changes as your focus changes. Another way you could say that is your real mission. Not just the words you say, well, we're about this, this, and this. You know, I came from the corporate world, and mission and vision and values and all those things were important, but sometimes they would just be blah, 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 blah. And by the time, you know, whether it was legal, whether it was PR, got done with the mission statement, it was either so short that people were like, what does that mean? Or was so long that people were falling asleep by the time you got to the end of it, right? But the real mission is what really drives an organization, drives a community towards what it's about and what it's doing. So the real mission of what really drives us changes as our focus changes. Now, I was reminded of that even more powerfully this morning. So, you know, I was already up because I get up really early on Sundays anyway, but I was up and my phone started blaring off, and last time it did that was, I guess it was Tuesday, and it was a tornado supposedly in the area. At 3 a.m., everybody in Mercer County's phone just started blaring, this unbelievable screeching. And then I saw on Facebook these posts of people showing, you know, looking at somebody looking, or a cartoon looking at the phone and going, listen, man, if there's a tornado coming at 3 a.m., I guess it's my time, and going back to sleep, right? So this morning, it starts blaring again. A little bit later, and it says flash floods. And I'm like, come on, I understand for tornadoes and things like that, but for flash floods, you're going to deal with it when you go. So I didn't think much of it. So I've got my Honda CR-V, 260,000 miles on the thing. Tree fell on it 2 years ago. Replaced the windshield. It's still driving. It's just like my war wagon, right? I drove it all the way through the pandemic. It was like apocalypse now is what it felt like. So I start going, and as I get not even a mile within my town, I look down, and my passenger window is halfway down. And it's raining. Now, my wife and I were just at a quinceañera celebration last night, so I'm like, okay, she was in the passenger side. There's no way, so I feel around. No, it wasn't down all night, so what's going on? I try to push the button, electric, it won't go up. So I pull over into a pharmacy, and I go, all right, maybe it gets stuck. It's an old car, maybe it gets stuck. So I go around the other side in the rain, and I'm pushing it up, and as I push it up, I let go of it, it drops back down. So now I'm thinking, how do I get up here, right? How do I get up here without the car being completely soaked? And then, how do I park it with the window partly down? What do I bring in? Not that there's a lot of valuables in there, but an open window is an open invitation. Somebody just taking whatever they wanted. And so, my mission all of a sudden changed because my focus changed. It wasn't anymore on, okay, what's going to happen on Sunday, and what's all this, and how's God going to use this? Right now, my focus changed to the immediate. I got to get that window up. I came up with a kind of, you know, my own little system. I actually had tons of napkins from before my diabetes predicament. I just had tons of napkins from fast food and Dunkin' Donuts and everything in my car. They would just pile up, and every now and then my wife would just take them out, like, how many do you need? I'm like, I just keep piling them. So what I did was I ended up folding the rubber down on the inside of the window, and then taking napkins and just stuffing them in, trying to create enough pressure to keep the window up as I pushed it up. And it actually worked, and I actually drove all the way here, and it still just opened a little crack. But it reminded me my focus all changed. So my mission changed, right? So the mission, vision, values, things we talk about, they're to unite us under a purpose. They're to bring us together under one banner. They give us direction so together we move. As for the Church of Jesus Christ, here's what I see overall for the Big C Church, the body of Jesus, okay? Each local expression can have its own way with it, but here's where I keep coming back to as the big picture, right? We are on mission of Jesus, carrying the message of Jesus and continuing the ministry of Jesus. So our mission comes from Jesus, right? We are carrying the message, the good news of Jesus to continue the ministry he started. So whenever I start to get off track, I go back to what did he do? How did he do it? What did he do? How did he do it? Because that's what we're to do. If we're to understand that, we need to go back to the beginning. And so it's my favorite passage, and it's Luke 4, 18 and 19. Jesus has gone through the temptations. He's come back the other side, and his ministry begins. He'd already been baptized. Then he goes into the wilderness for the temptation, comes back out of it, and now he has his mission, and he speaks it, speaking from Isaiah 61, and it says this in Luke 4. The Spirit of the Lord is upon me. He has anointed me to bring good news to the poor. He has sent me to proclaim the captives will be released, that the blind will see, and that the oppressed will be set free, and that the time of the Lord's favor has come. I look at that and go, if that's what Jesus started his ministry and he said, this is why I'm here, quoting from Isaiah 61, then I have to look at my ministry, and this was actually something God gave me very early on into my pastoral ministry to go, this is where you're going to be centered. This is what you're about. And I think this is what the church in general is to be about. See, the church's mission is one of rescue. The church's mission is one of redemption. Therefore, no one is ever beyond hope. And no one is ever beyond the reach of Jesus' blood. All are welcomed into the church's mission of rescue and redemption. God didn't give up on you. God didn't give up on me. So we must not give up on the lost or the distant. We're going to look today of a story of a man named Saul, New Testament Saul. So when we look at that, and we're going to be looking at Acts 9, if you go and if you use one of your Bible searches, Bible Gateway, Blue Letter Bible, different apps that I use, even Bible Hub, you can search for words. So when I searched for Saul, and I just looked at the New Testament, there are 3 references to him before his conversion. The first one is as Stephen is being stoned. It says in Acts 7, they dragged him out of the city, Stephen, began to stone him. His accusers took off their coats and laid them at the feet of a young man named Saul. So he was there. Not only was there, in Acts 1, it says Saul was one of the witnesses, and he agreed completely with the killing of Stephen. Maybe he even incited it. We don't know that, but we know he was there and he agreed with it. And then further in Acts 8, it says, but Saul was going everywhere to destroy the church. He went from house to house, dragging out both men and women to throw them into prison. Those are the 3 references of Saul before, as we pick up in Acts 9. So who is Saul? And more importantly, what is his problem? Right? If we looked at somebody today doing those kind of things, we'd go, what's his problem? What's his beef with these new Christians, with these followers of Jesus? What's going on? Well, Saul gives his autobiography and his credentials in Philippians 3. And he gives it different times. He also does it in a couple of other places as he's on trial. He gives his background and his credentials because it goes to his defense. In Philippians 3, he says this about himself. If someone else thinks they have reason to put confidence in the flesh, I have more. Circumcised on the 8th day of the people of Israel, of the tribe of Benjamin. He's saying he was raised as a Jew. He was raised as a Hebrew. He was raised according to the law. Therefore, he says, I am a Hebrew of Hebrews. In regard to the law, I'm a Pharisee. As for zeal, of having drive, he's saying, I persecuted the church. As for righteousness, all by the law, he's saying. If you want to live by the law, fine, then I'm your standard. As for righteousness based on the law, I am faultless. He goes on, though, then to say, but I am nothing. Outside of Jesus, I am nothing. But he gives his credentials. So that tells us he was a zealous persecutor of the new church whose aim was to destroy the testimony of Jesus, the faith of Jesus and his followers, all in the name of protecting the old church, in the name of protecting the law. And the name of what he would think of was the real church. You see, Paul wasn't just some wacko. He thought he was on a mission from God. He thought he was defending the church, defending the law, defending the religious ways. And that's what made him so zealous. That's what made him so energetic in what he was doing. Saul was the upholder of the religious law and way of life, a warrior for the law, who was willing to give his life to defend it and to kill anyone attacking it. A man on a mission from God. If you'd had talked with Saul there before his conversion, he probably would have said, I'm on a mission from God. Saul would not be delayed, could not be stopped, and will not be distracted from his own mission. We know it wasn't from God, but he had deceived himself into convincing himself that it was. So he was determined on his own mission until Jesus got a hold of him. Turn your Bibles to Acts 9, verse 1. It says, meanwhile, Saul was uttering threats with every breath and was eager to kill the Lord's followers. Not just to persecute them, to kill them, it says here. So he went to the high priest. He came up with a plan. He requested letters addressed to the synagogues in Damascus. So what he's doing is he's going to the high priest in Jerusalem, the center of the church, and he's saying, I need letters from you to the local temples. And what were those letters about? Asking for their cooperation, the temple, in the arrest of any followers of the way. Any followers of Jesus that he found there. He wanted to bring them, both men and women, back to Jerusalem in chains. Think about that. He had a plan. His plan was, I will get the ultimate authority, the high priest in the church of Jerusalem, and I will get them to have the local temples help me round these people up, chain them up, and then basically lead them back in chains to Jerusalem. His anger, his self-righteousness fills this plan. He sees the real authority of the church in Jerusalem, and he wants to command them to expose their enemies. This is his best plan. In his mind, I will kill this emerging Christianity. I will kill and end this heresy. That's his focus, and that drives his mission that he carries out. Verse 3, as he was approaching Damascus on this mission, a light from heaven suddenly shone down around him. he fell to the ground and heard a voice saying to him, Saul, Saul, why are you persecuting me? In Acts 22, Paul talks about, and he's that day in a trial, and he says it was midday, and so the sun was at its highest in midday, and the light that he saw was brighter than the sun. Brighter than the sun. It continues. Who are you, Lord? Saul asks. What he's saying is, this light that's brighter than the sun is clearly something greater than me. If you shine a light brighter than the sun, that is something more powerful than you. And so he's attributing that. Another translation in that, or of that word, means Lord or master of me, or, I love this one, decider of me. Who are you blinding me, the decider of me? The master of me. And a voice replied, I am Jesus. I am the one you are persecuting. Now get up and go into the city, and you will be told what you must do. He continued on the same journey. Get up, go into the city, and I will let you know. But now he's under a new authority. You see, Saul thought he was operating with his new brilliant plan under the highest authority there was, until he met Jesus. And that bright light that shone down, that blinded him physically, he knew was something that was of greater authority than any high priest of any church within Jerusalem. When you encounter Jesus, your authority changes. And now look what happens. The men with Saul, these are the men to help carry this out, that are probably bonded to him, whether that's from the church, whether that's from the Jewish government, right, and the Sadducees. They are bound to him. You are with him to do whatever he wants to carry out his mission. So they had already seen things that was done. They were on a mission of destruction. These men, verse 7, the men with Saul stood speechless. It says, for they heard the sound of someone's voice, but saw no one. That says to me, as they saw the light, they heard, Saul, Saul, why are you persecuting me? But they didn't see anyone. It says Saul picked himself up off the ground. When he opened his eyes, he realized he was blind. So his companions, his compatriots, on this trail of destruction, on this mission of destruction, lead him by the hand into Damascus. And he remained there blind for 3 days and did not eat and did not drink. It says, now meanwhile, there was a believer in Damascus named Ananias. The Lord spoke to him in a vision, calling, Ananias? Yes, Lord, he replied. We see again. If you're listening for the Lord and you hear his voice, our reply is prompt and obedient, yes. Right? Go all the way back to Samuel, right? In the Old Testament. Right? Samuel. He gets up and he goes to Eli. You wanted me? No, I didn't call you. It happens 3 times, and all of a sudden Eli goes, oh, wait a minute. If it's not me, and if the kid's not hearing things, it's got to be God. An authority over me. So what is the response he tells him? He says, when you hear it again, say, speak, because your servant is listening. Your servant is ready. Your servant is willing. And that's Ananias. He says, yes, Lord. And then he gets his mission in verse 11. The Lord said, go over to the straight street, to the house of Judas. When you get there, ask for a man from Tarsus named Saul. He is praying to me right now. I've shown him a vision of a man named Ananias coming in, laying hands on him so he can see again. If I'm Ananias and I'm plugged into the church and he represents the church here, when I hear a man from Tarsus named Saul, wait. Hold on. What? Probably ask God to repeat that. Can you repeat that again? Sorry, I blacked out for a minute. Who is it? Who do you want? Who are you sending me to? And so God makes it clear. He's praying to me right now. I have shown him a vision. I have mentioned your name. And you are going to lay hands on him so he can see. That's my second thought. But couldn't we leave him blind a little longer? Kind of try this out? Let's see if he's really changed. What harm can that do, right? And if he hasn't changed, well, my plan would be, well, he's blind. He's not going to do as much damage as he did before. But his instructions are very clear. But he has questions, as I would have questions. In verse 13, but Lord, exclaimed. That's got to be an understatement. But Lord, exclaimed. No, it was like, but Lord, are you serious? That's what you want from me? Exclaimed Ananias. I've heard many people talk about the terrible things this man has done to the believers in Jerusalem. And he is authorized by the leading priest. He's authorized by this great authority. He's arguing with God and saying, but that man is authorized by a big authority, by the highest authority. That's what fear does. It takes our eyes off of who we're talking to. And we see God in human terms. And we go, wait a minute, I'm limited and this guy's got all this. Yeah, but you're talking to God. You're talking to Jehovah. And his authority is to arrest everyone who calls upon your name. I also love that idea of, because you'll see arguments like this as you talk with people, and it'll say, what doesn't he say, right? I always look at from these things and go, what's he not saying? What's he not saying? Ananias says, I've heard many people talk. What's he not saying? I've heard people say this, or I've seen this, or I think, Lord, I think he's a bad dude. I think he's on a trail of destruction. No. Put it off in the third person. Lord, many people. All these people, right? So we exaggerate it to help make our point, right? Many people. Oh, so many people, right? That's what he's doing here. And he's authorized. He's having this argument with God. He's saying, are you sure, God? This is what I heard from many people, so many people. You would not believe how many people I heard this from. He doesn't say, I believe it. He says, I've heard. He puts it off on others. God hears him and responds. But the Lord said, go. For Saul is my chosen instrument to take my message to the Gentiles, to the kings, as well as the people of Israel. And I will show him how much he must suffer for my name's sake. Those are the words that I think are the essence of the challenge to the church and to this church. Go, he is my chosen instrument to take my message, to be on my plan. You go and do as I ask, God's saying. He's now under my authority. He's now on my mission, not his own. And my plans are bigger. My plans are greater. My plans you can't even understand. God's direction is clear. Open your eyes, Ananias, because he's mine now. He's on my mission, doing my work now. I've restored him, and I will use him, because that's what I do. Jesus said, I've come to give life. Give it abundantly. We, his church, are on mission. His mission. So no one is too far from his reach. No one is unworthy of his blood. And no one is unwelcome in his church. To be the church of Jesus means we have to fight to stay open to people, to Sauls. Who would that modern day Saul be now? In Germany, back in the 30s, that would be Hitler. We have to fight to stay open. We have to fight to stay vulnerable. When all around voices are telling you, you better be careful. You better protect yourself. Watch what you're doing. Watch out for that person. I don't know if they're going to fit in with you. You better protect yourself. If we're called to reach the least of these, then we have to be willing and driven to get down into the mud. That's where broken people are. That's where the people are that need to be rescued, that need to be healed. And to go where we would not choose to go on our own. Because those people, way over there, think different, or look different, or act different, or seem so far away from the blood of Jesus, might be my people, called to bring my message to the world so that the world can receive the good news. I have begun to look at my life as kind of a relay race. My job is to take the baton, which is the good news of Jesus, and go as far, as hard as I can, while at the same time looking for people to hand the baton off to. So it's like a bag of batons. And I'm running, I'm going, okay, you look good, you got that, okay? We get you with an encounter with Jesus, we understand the healing, we understand the restoration, you've experienced it, here's the baton, now you go, and they go that way. You go, and they go that way. So that the mission, the good news, can be spread further and faster. Run your leg. Now it's your turn. We're always looking for, now run your leg. You go to those people that you're called to. You go to those people. We have to keep looking at that. But relay races are hard. We saw that in the Olympics. The men's 4x100, it was called something different when I was in school, so I have to catch it. 4x100, so 4 people running 100 meters, has had failure after failure after failure of reaching their goal of a gold Olympic, though they have had the fastest runners overall. And the reason is 100 meters, if you're running 100 meters and you're sprinting it, your focus, your mission is just go as fast as I can until that finish line. Start as fast as I can, get to that finish line as fast as I can. Now when you're doing that in a relay, now you've got a baton and you got to hand it off. Here's the problem. The next person you're looking to hand it off to, they're realizing, okay, my mission, run as fast as I can, as fast as I can. Nobody's looking at my mission is to pass the baton. And so we continually, where the Americans have faltered, they continually take the 4 fastest runners, put them together, throw them together often. They get very little training and then go for it. We've got the fastest runners. We've got the fastest people. We should win. Not if they don't run as a team. So time after time, something falls short. The baton falls. This year, I don't think they got it to the semis. And I was watching the race, and in the exchange that went awry, the sprinter's coming up, and he's got the baton, and he's running near the end like this, going, here it is, grab it. And the person behind has his hand back like this, like, okay, give it to me. So here's what you got. Here's his hand, here's the baton. It ain't happening. Nobody's looking at how do I pass it off? How do I give it off? And so as a result, finally the guy has to turn around, oh, I see it, grabs it, and takes off. Right? Relay races are hard because we have to have our focus. It's run by the best team. So we must, as a church, looking at your local mission and vision that was given to Pastor Tom, that God spoken to Pastor Tom, and I know that because I know his heart behind it, and to the elders here. So we have to seek as a team. We have to grow as a team, and we have to go as a team. That creates great challenges for any church. Creates great challenges for Cranford, because in order to do that, that means things have to be laid aside. The focus has to be together of what the church can be, what the church can do, the difference it can make, so that you can reach the lost, the hurt, the poor, and those with little help. We need to shine and look at the expression of the church and how the church is doing based on how it shines out there, not just in here. It's been said before, the worship team can come up, please. It's been said before that the church should be a hospital for the hurting. And I've adopted that, and I've thought a lot about that. But as I think about it even more, I think we can go the next step, and it's this. The church should be the center of critical care for our communities and within our circles. The center of care. When we think of hospital, we think of emergency room. We think of first responders like I talked about last week. But then, once that's done, who cares for them? And are the lost considered critical? So there's kind of, okay, now how do they get their healing? How do they get their restoration? How do they get renewed? How do they get built back up? Here, in the church. That's how that happens. So that the church builds up to be the place that people who are lost, people that are hopeless, people that don't have answers, people who need connection, people who just need fellowship, come to, because it's a place and a center of critical care for your communities and then within your own circles. Who's the circle of people that are around you? How are you caring? How are you showing Jesus? How are you showing love? That's what takes and makes a body a church. It's being on mission together. And that means their sacrifice together to do that. So we have to put aside the things, right, that the verse says entangles us, ensnares us, entraps us. What are those things? My agenda. What are those things? It would be better if, my preferences. What are those things? It was better back when, so if we can go back to that time, let me tell you something. God's plan never goes backwards. Never. What he has for you, what he has for the church is forward. If you're looking for it to be restored backwards, it's not going to happen. But he's got something forward. Will you follow? Will you go? At the end of this, it says Ananias went, and he found him, and he laid hands on him, and he said, "Brother Saul." This is the same guy that he said to God, "What, Saul of Tarsus?" Now he's brother. Why? Because he entered into mission with him. And God vouched for him and said, "He's my servant." For some of you, you need to hear those words from God. That you are my servant to take my message to the people. For other of you, you need to look around and say, who could be? Who needs to hear that good news? Even as simple as, this is what my life is with Jesus. And yeah, I still struggle. Who needs to be in those doors? Years ago, I read a book called Who Moved My Church? It was based kind of the idea of who moved my cheese. But the idea was there was a church, and it was in the middle of a town. And it was at that time, it was on the suburbs, so it was just outside the town. But as the pastor of the church went away on a long trip, a very long trip. Maybe it was a mission trip. I don't know what happened. And so he comes back. The town had enveloped the church. So it just kept growing and growing and growing while he was away. And when he comes back to where, okay, this all looks different, but let me go to where my church is, he saw walls with no doors and no roof. So he's horrified. What happened to my church? How will I continue with my church? So he gathers the people that were there at the church before he left. Say, let's build it back to what it was. What are they saying? Let's build my church back to what it was. They fixed the walls. They put the doors on. They put fences around. And they put a roof on. And it's after that the book talks, it's just a short little book, it talks about here's why the doors were gone, so people could come in and out and be served. Here's why there was no roof, so that people would know this is just an open place for you to meet, a place to go, to come. He didn't ask why the changes. He just wanted back my church. If the church is to move forward, you got to sacrifice my church. And for those of you hurting, you got to say, Jesus, I need to hear that I am your chosen one, to bring your message in whatever way I can. And to those that aren't hurting and feel that from Jesus, you need to say, where are the chosen ones in my communities and in my circles that need to hear that good news, that need to feel restored, that need to be healed? And what will it take? And more specifically, what will I surrender to move that mission forward?
Sometimes I think, what will people say of me when I'm only just a memory, when I'm home where my soul belongs? 'Cause I love when no one else would show up. Was I Jesus to the least of us? Was my worship more than just a song? I wanna live like that and give it all I have, so that everything I say
for you. Father, I ask for those that are here that have heard your word, heard your truth, and been challenged by it. I ask you would give them courage. Courage to step out of their comfort zone. Courage to surrender whatever it is they're holding on to that they don't even know is holding them back. Father, I lift up those that are hurting today, and those words deep in their heart would mean so much for them to hear from you. You are my chosen servant. You appointed them. You reached down and rescued them. Let your Spirit fall on them and lift them up. And I pray for those, Father, that are ready and willing, but they just don't know how. That you would keep alive that fire. Let it burn brighter. Let it burn stronger. Let their ears be more attentive and tuned to the words that you are already speaking. Let it be contagious and spread so that the mission of this church as part of your church body would grow and expand for your purposes. In Jesus' name, amen. Have a great week. Please fill out a card, even if it just says, "Hi, welcome back."